Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back. With these proposed changes to the VAT threshold, many of you who are already in micros are starting to think, hold on, if I have to keep detailed accounts just to claim back my VAT, would I not be better off keeping these detailed accounts and being able to reclaim the entirety of my expenses? In which case, would it not be a good thing to consider leaving my micro and moving into a structure which allows me to do that? And this is a very good question, particularly if you do have considerable expenses. But obviously the next question, and one that you don't want to get wrong, is if I leave my micro, what should I leave it for? So I'm going to compare the entreprise individuelle with the limited companies, not in terms of tax or social charges, because I've done videos like that, and probably I'll do more videos like that. But these are 8 key differences between the 2 different kinds of setups. And for the moment, not being too particular about which kind of limited company we're talking about, because in many ways they have an awful lot in common, but none of them have much in common with the entreprise individuelle. And before we get into that, can I just shamelessly ask you, if you are watching these videos and you're finding value in them, please could you consider subscribing? They take me quite a lot of time to make, and at least if you subscribe, then I know that it's worth me putting in the time and carrying on making them. So in no particular order, and quite possibly not in the best order, we're starting off with entreprise individuelle, cheap, quick, easy to set up. Now, if you are already a micro, then you already have an entreprise individuelle, just a simplified format of it. If you want to move to the full-size format where you keep accounts and you deduct expenses, then all you need to do is inform the tax office. And the time to do that is at the beginning of the year before you make your tax declaration. So the key to this is to anticipate it very much in advance. If you want to set up a limited company, then this is going to take a little while because there are more legal formalities to go through. And because there are more legal formalities to go through, they all cost a bit of money. So you can expect a minimum of €500 to set up a limited company. There are plenty of people who will say that is not possible. I paid $1,000, I paid $1,500, I paid $3,000 to set up a limited company. It's going to depend on how much material, equipment, value there already is in your existing micro. That's going to have an effect. But the other thing that's going to have an effect is just how much your accountant decides to charge you. The prices that I'm giving you are prices that are practiced by Dogs. You can see a little Dogs logo in the corner down there. Dogs are France's biggest online accountants. You can check them out online. I've left a link in the description, which will also give you 2 months free if you decide to sign up with them. They have English speakers on request, and I recommend them all the time because I love them. They cannot deal with every kind of activity, but if they can deal with you, I highly recommend that you go with them. Setting up a limited company is not time sensitive. You can do this at any point during the year. So if you can see in September that you're about to go over the TVA threshold or the turnover threshold, or just you've decided that now is a good time to change, you can do it at any point during the year. So there's no need to wait for year end. You can just close down your micro, set up a limited company and start again. So that's that. Moving on. An entreprise individuelle has slightly lighter accounting obligations than a limited company, which has more administrative formalities. And what does that mean concretely for you? Well, it means that an entreprise individuelle has cheaper ongoing accounting expenses. An entreprise individuelle does not require you to put in any setup capital, whereas a limited company does. But having said that, you can set up a limited company with a minimum of €1. So that's not really a deal breaker. Does €1 look particularly serious? No, it doesn't. It's much more normal to put in something like 500 or 1,000. But is it legal? It's perfectly legal. An entreprise individuelle cannot have partners. This is kind of what it says on the can. Because individuelle, then it's just you. You are the business is you. You can't have partners. You can have employees, no problem there, but not partners. Whereas a limited company, you can have partners. So different numbers of partners depending on the kind of limited company, but yes, you definitely can have that. And this might not be an issue for you. Maybe you can't imagine having partners, you don't want partners, you don't envisage ever having partners. But things can change, and if you have an entreprise individuelle and then circumstances do change and you do want partners, then be aware that you're going to have big changes to make at that point. Whereas if you already have a limited company, then it's a very simple transformation to go from a single person limited company to a multi-person limited company. Okay, this is important. For an entreprise individuelle, personal patrimoine protected since 2022. So traditionally, if anything went horribly wrong with the business, then all of your personal property could be up for grabs, okay, for want of a better expression. Whereas with a limited company, there is a very clear line between what belongs to the company and what belongs to you. When you set up a limited company, then effectively you're creating a whole other person, and what belongs to the company belongs to the company, and what belongs to you is something completely apart, two completely separate owners. Now, since 2022, the law was amended and it has provided greater protection for the entrepreneur individuel and his personal property or her personal property. But what can I say? It's a kind of mongrel version, so the protection is never going to be as complete and as locked down as it is for a limited company. Cannot sell equipment to self. Okay, so I know there are micros out there, and I've spoken to some of you who have invested thousands of euros, sometimes tens of thousands of euros in equipment for your micro activity, and all of that equipment is entirely self-funded because, of course, as a micro, you cannot claim anything in terms of expenses at all. So now you have equipment that's worth a lot of money. And if you were to go to the full-size regime of the entreprise individuelle, then yes, you can now put that equipment into your business, but you cannot sell that equipment to the company. And again, we're coming back to this dividing line of what belongs to me and what belongs to the company. Because once I've set up a company, I have two separate entities, and to sell something, I need two parties. So if I do it this way, I can take what belongs to me personally and I can sell it to my company. And what that means is that the company is going to start out with a debt towards me. It doesn't have to pay me straight away. It can pay me as and when. It doesn't have to pay me all in one go. It can pay me a bit at a time. But the essential thing is that money comes to me free of social charges and free of tax, because essentially it's the reimbursement of a debt. Now, if you only have 500 euros worth of stuff, like a second-hand computer and half of a telephone and, a second-hand IKEA desk, then there's not a whole lot that you can sell to your company. But if you have thousands and thousands of euros worth of tools or equipment, then that can be a very, very useful thing to you to be able to sell that to your company. So that's definitely worth bearing in mind. I don't know how many of you this applies to, but if you have been previously employed and you've been made unemployed and you're getting unemployment benefits, then if you are in an entreprise individuelle, then effectively all of the money that you're earning is counted by France Travail, and it has an immediate impact on the amount of unemployment benefit you'll be entitled to. Whereas with a limited company, you can very easily have a setup whereby you carry on receiving 100% of all of your employment benefit until you reach the end of that period. And that could be 2 years, 3 years, depending on how old you are and how long you have previously been employed by your company. You can use that unemployment benefit as a living wage, and you can either stock up money in your new company that you can then invest in the company, or that you can later draw as dividends, which will come to you without social charges. But in any case, your employment benefits will not be affected. So if you are in that position, that's a really key and crucial thing for you to know about. And finally, on the subject of dividends, with an entreprise individuelle, forget about them, it's not going to happen. With a limited company, dividends are possible depending on the kind of limited company that you choose. Some will give you much more access to dividends than others, but again, that's a subject for another video. So I hope that shed some light on some of the differences between the entreprise individuelle and a limited company setup. Again, if this has been helpful, then please do subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.